What's going on, guys? It's your host, Neil Villapiano, and welcome to another edition of Mofobo Network Presents here on YouTube. Thank you guys, as always, for taking some time out of your busy schedule to check this video out. And if you like this video, please make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any new videos that we post here on YouTube every single Wednesday. As always, we have a ton to talk about in the wide world of sports, and today is no exception. We are going to be previewing the conference finals for the NBA postseason right here. That's right, we are now down to the final four teams in the NBA. This should be very exciting. We have some classic teams that have been in this situation numerous times, and a couple teams that have had recent success, or at least one of them has had recent success of winning a championship, and the other is probably the most surprising of the four. So without further ado, and without any more delay, let's tip this episode off with talking about the Eastern Conference Finals, and more particularly, we'll start with the Boston Celtics. So just really quickly, the Celtics are taking on the Miami Heat. It is the battle of the 3 seed and the 5 seed. So this is really fascinating with the Boston Celtics, because now they've finally gotten to the point in their rebuild or revive of this classic franchise. It's gotten to the point where now they have a legitimate shot of winning a championship. Now, I know back in 2018, led by Terry Rozier and obviously Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and all those guys, the Celtics did get to the conference finals, but did lose in 7 games to the Cleveland Cavaliers, the LeBron James-led Cleveland Cavaliers. And since that point, you can kind of say the Celtics have not been able to take the step that they needed to take. And some people want to say that it was probably due to the fact that Kyrie Irving maybe just wasn't the leader that was meshing well with the Celtics. Whatever you want to say is the reason, they came into this year with a brand new focus, relatively the same focus, because obviously they're trying to win a championship and take advantage of, this timeline that they have with these young, talented players in Tatum, Jaylen Brown. They brought in Kemba Walker via free agency. They still have Marcus Smart. So they have a lot of guys. Also, obviously, Gordon Hayward, but he's been out most of the playoffs. They have this group, and they're looking to try to take advantage of it and win a championship. And now they stand just 4 wins away from competing for a championship for the first time since 2010, when they lost in 7 games to their hated rivals in the Los Angeles Lakers. So the Celtics are led by guys that I mentioned before, and I think that's the biggest thing when you look at the Celtics team. When they're knocking down their threes, they're a very lethal team. But one thing that does stand out, other than obviously their dominant three-point shooting, is the fact that they are one of the more aggressive teams when it comes to shooting the mid-range. They may not always look to try to shoot the three, but without a doubt, they will be looking as many times as possible to shoot the mid-range. I like how, Kemba Walker has that classic push-up that kind of looks like a foul, but it's really not. He just is able to get, his defender on skates and then put it up and knock down a J. And that's really, kind of the thing that Kemba is going to need to continue to do in order to gain success. And I guess I would say I would give a little bit of criticism to Kemba Walker just because of the fact that he at times hasn't been the main catalyst of the offense. And luckily for him, at least for right now, it hasn't really cost the Celtics too much, because guys like Tatum and Brown have really stepped up and really carried the load. But in order for the Celtics to get past this gritty, tough, defensive-minded Miami Heat team, Kemba's going to have to, step up. This is his moment. He came to Boston for this reason, and now he gets that opportunity. And, this is just going to be a very interesting, situation. Now, let me go over some of the numbers in going into this round. Here's a couple of things I saw from an NBA.com article where they call number to know. The first one is 10.5 or 10.5. In their 7-game series against the Toronto Raptors, the Boston Celtics allowed 10.5 fewer points per 100 possessions than the Raptors scored in the regular season. That was by far the biggest such defensive differential in the conference semifinals. So obviously, right away, you look at it and say, these two teams are very, very similar. And the Celtics are a little bit known for their offense, but they could certainly play defense. They certainly can. They got Williams. They got Daniel Tice. Jaylen Brown could play some solid defense. Jason Tatum. And the thing about particularly Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, is that they contest more threes than any other, duo in the NBA. Statistically, they do it a lot more. So they know that teams are going to be looking to try to shoot threes, and Miami Heat are one of those teams that likes to shoot the threes a lot. They're going to come out and try to be as aggressive as possible. And, really that's kind of something that we have to keep in mind when we do this. But looking at the Celtics, and you look at Brad Stevens, this is kind of the culmination of why he came to Boston, why he came to the NBA. I think it's safe to say that what he's been able to do with this team and what he's been able to do with the Celtics, you have to consider him to at least be a top 5 coach in the NBA. He's one of the smartest minds in the league. And with the team that doesn't have, that big name superstar that everybody knows, I know Jason Tatum has gotten to that point or is about to get to that point, but no big name superstar like when they had Kyrie Irving. It just shows that Brad Stevens is very big on the team aspect and playing together. And that's what the Celtics team has done. And I think Kemba Walker really is the better option, or, you could say was the better option for the Celtics to get than Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving can do a lot of great things, but he may not be necessarily that much of a team guy. Kemba Walker can do some really good things, and he also is a very big team guy. And speaking of Jason Tatum, there's something that I really wanted to share with you guys, because I was reading an article yesterday from Kirk Goldsberry of ESPN. He's an ESPN staff writer, and he wrote an article that's titled, "This is Jason Tatum's Chance to Cement His Superstar Transformation." And it kind of starts out by reading this. 3 players in the history of the NBA have recorded 25 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists in a Game 7 before the age of 25. The other 2, Jerry West and the late Kobe Bryant. The first guy, Jerry West, is immortalized as the league's logo. The second became one of the most revered basketball icons of the 21st century. And the third is a 22-year-old leading a decorated franchise into the conference finals. Jason Tatum has clearly had his best season of his very young career and really does have the opportunity to take that next step into being one of the elite players in the NBA. And one of the big reasons for that is the self-created threes, is that Tatum is much more aggressive when it comes to setting up his own shot instead of looking to try to have the rest of his teammates set him up. He's looking to do it himself, and he's not afraid to shoot those threes and be confident from that point. It's hard to overstate just how important Tatum's increases in three-point activity have been to his scoring success. Last season, he ranked 84th in the NBA in total made threes. This season, he soared to 11th. The story of that specific improvement explains a big part of Tatum's leap forward. I've said this before and I'll say it again. The NBA, thanks to the Golden State Warriors, has become much more of a three-point shooting contest. So every team knows that they need to have 3, 4, 5 guys that can shoot consistently from downtown. Jason Tatum has developed his game the way the game has developed itself, and he is definitely doing very well. And as a result, he has gotten better and better and better. So for me, the guy you have to watch out for if you're the Miami Heat is clearly Jason Tatum. If you can kind of force him to take some bad shots, maybe take a bad three here or there, you give yourself a legitimate shot of winning that series. You also have to continue to be aggressive. But the bottom line for the Boston Celtics is simply this. They're a young group that can really, really surprise you. They surprised a lot of people for the first 4 or 5 games, how dominant they were against the defending champions in the Toronto Raptors. Now they come in just 4 wins away from going to the NBA Finals. They can exploit you from the three-point line. They can exploit you from the mid-range. If you could force them to drive the lane a little bit more, even if the refs might be calling some fouls, you're giving yourself a competitive edge against this Boston Celtics team. So the Celtics are no joke. They are here for a reason, and they're going to look to try to prove again what that reason is by getting to the NBA Finals once again. Now, as far as the Miami Heat are concerned, they are without a doubt one of the top 2, definitely top 3 biggest stories of this 2019-2020 season, because going into it, they were clearly now moving away from the era in which it was led by guys like Dwayne Wade. You had Shaq for a while, you had Alonzo Mourning, and then obviously a little bit earlier, and not that long ago, you did have the likes of D. Wade still, LeBron James, Chris Bosh, and those guys winning 2 championships. So now they were going into a younger, semi-rebuilding type of situation. But Pat Riley, being the smart man that he is, saw the opportunity with a guy like Jimmy Butler to get him to come to Miami, to have his own team and build the team the way Jimmy Butler plays the game of basketball, which is tough. You work hard every single day, you grind it out, you give it 110%. Jimmy Butler's been like that since he went to college, once he got into the NBA, and is a big reason why he's one of the biggest names in the NBA right now. Certainly now that we're into the conference finals and what he's been able to do. But Jimmy Butler came to Miami. They've gotten some guys around him, Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, Crowder that they got in a trade, Goran Dragic. I mean, they have all of these pieces that they may not be the biggest names and the guys that, create a super team, but they all play with the same intensity that Jimmy Butler plays as well. So it all just works together. And again, they play just a big team-oriented type of game that works seamlessly with everything that goes on in Miami. And Eric Spoelstra, who has been a coach for a long time, and a lot of people were kind of interested to see what he would be able to do once the big three of LeBron, D-Wade, and Chris Bosh left. And I got to tell you, he's done a fine job. And again, he also should be considered one of the top 5 coaches in the NBA. I mean, you have 2 of the smartest guys who know so much about playing the team-oriented game in Brad Stevens and Eric Spoelstra. And now they come together. And Eric Spoelstra knows he has a team that is going to be physical, that is going to grind it out, and do everything that they need to can. Another guy that I forgot to mention, who I didn't even realize is actually from New Jersey. I am a New Jersey, kid born and raised, so I always get excited when I have local, kids do well, is Bam Adebayo, who was actually originally born in Newark, New Jersey. But Bam Adebayo has just been a blocking, grinded out big man who is more athletic than most big men in the NBA right now. And, having that 1-2 punch of Jimmy Butler and Bam playing together, I've seen it not just in the regular season, but when we came back in the restart in the bubble, they just seem to click from day one. And that's what's really great, is that Jimmy Butler doesn't need the greatest players to be playing around him. I mean, he had more talent per se when he played half a season with the Philadelphia 76ers last year, and they could only get to the second round of the playoffs. Now he's with a team that's maybe a little bit less talented, but a little bit younger, a little bit more, team-based, and that's the success that they've had. And you look at this, the Heat are ranked second in three-point percentage, which right now is 37.9% in the regular season, and ranked third, 38% even in the playoffs. So just like the Celtics, the Heat are a very dangerous three-point shooting team, particularly Jay Crowder. I never expected Jay Crowder to develop into a three-point shooting force, but now that he has that arsenal in his game, he just became that much more of a very valuable player to a playoff team and possibly a championship team in the Miami Heat. And I think what makes watching the Heat so much fun as well is just that they kind of play the old school type of basketball, the physical type of game. Some teams just don't want to hang with them because of how physical and how relentless they are. I think resilience is the big word that I would use to describe the Miami Heat. They have resilience out the wazoo. I mean, it's incredible what they're able to do on a game-to-game basis and frustrate teams. They went and played the Indiana Pacers in the first round, and we knew the whole beef or, on-court beef between Jimmy Butler and T.J. Warren, who T.J. Warren became one of the most surprising players in the bubble. But, the Heat took care of them pretty easily. And then in the second round, they're taking on the Milwaukee Bucks, who everybody thought, okay, I think the Bucks got this one, even though it'll be a tough series. And the Heat, for lack of a better term, just kicked the crap out of them. I mean, the Bucks looked lifeless. They were lucky that they won one game in that series. The Heat just were so resilient and so relentless that it tired out the Bucks. They weren't expecting it. They weren't ready for it. And the Heat just proved that they might not have been the more talented team, but they were just the better team in general. The Bucks struggled to play together as one. The Heat figured it out from day one. And that was the biggest difference in that series. And now the Heat are coming in on a huge high with a huge amount of confidence and knowing that they're 4 wins away from going to the NBA Finals. And if Jimmy Butler, because I know he'll continue to be the focal point for that team, he could continue to move this team along and get them to the finals, I think you got to put Jimmy Butler in one of the top 5 players in the NBA. Because for him to go to a team like Miami, where there weren't that many high expectations, and now they're on the cusp of possibly winning a championship, 8 wins away from doing it, is a phenomenal job by him, a phenomenal job by Eric Spoelstra, and a phenomenal job by Pat Riley. So you look at this series, there was a lot of excitement, a lot of a lot of very even teams. It'll be strength versus strength without a doubt. And the question obviously that you guys are going to have for me is that, Neil, who do you have in this series? And it is very tough. I think without a doubt it will go 7 because of how evenly matched these two sides are. But with that being said, give me the Miami Heat to win that series in 7 games. I think that the Heat are going to just continue to play the way they've been playing. Nobody seemed to figure out how to, slow them down and tire them down even a little bit. The rotations are very, very good. They're a much deeper team off the bench than the Celtics are, and I think that'll come in handy as we get later and later in this series. And as a result, I have the Miami Heat winning that series, and Jimmy Butler is going to have to go off in 2 or 3 of these games because the Celtics are going to give it everything that they got. So give me the Miami Heat to win this series and advance to the NBA Finals in 7 games. So now let's shift over to the Western Conference, and one of the 2 teams in the Western Conference was certainly expected to be there. The other, maybe not so much, but certainly for me, because if you go back to when I previewed the NBA playoffs on my podcast, the Mofobo Network podcast, I had the Denver Nuggets going to the NBA Finals. And what they've shown through the first 2 rounds has proved it. Maybe I didn't expect them to get there with how they've been able to do it, but nonetheless, they're there. So talking about the Denver Nuggets, they are incredible with how much they've been able to fight through so much adversity in these games and still find a way to get to the Western Conference Finals and put themselves just 4 wins away from going to the NBA Finals. I mean, this is incredible. And what I think makes the Nuggets so special to watch is that they were not one of those teams that had to go out and get a superstar or trade for somebody. They basically built their dominant players for the most part through the draft. You have Jamal Murray, you have Nikola Jokic, you have Gary Harris, Michael Porter Jr. I mean, really, the only guy is probably Paul Millsap that wasn't drafted and developed by the Nuggets. But once he got there and started grooving with the rest of the team, he's done very well also. So this team is very natural. And Mike Malone has done a good job of just bringing these guys along very slowly. If you remember last year, for a good while, because the Golden State Warriors were struggling out of the gate, and the Nuggets came out like a house on fire and actually were the number 1 seed in the West for a while. I think they ended up finishing at the 3rd seed. And a lot of people were impressed with what the Nuggets did last year and gave them higher expectations this year. And I think for the most part, they were able to exceed those, and they certainly exceeded them once we got to the restart. And you saw them in the first round against the Utah Jazz. They went down 3-1. So obviously, right then and there, we were saying, wow, Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert and those boys are really, really beating up on this Nuggets team. It looks like a complete mismatch, which was a surprise to me. But the Nuggets, led by Jamal Murray and also Nikola Jokic, fought back. And if it wasn't for a near-made shot at the buzzer by Michael Conley, they probably would have gotten knocked out in that series much sooner. But nonetheless, they fought back and were able to win Game 7 in a thriller to advance to the 2nd round. And of course, and not surprisingly, the Nuggets had to face the Los Angeles Clippers. And you looked at it and everybody was saying, oh, it's easy that we just got to pick the Clippers because, look, we all won an all-LA Western Conference Finals. This is what we've been waiting for all year, blah, 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 blah. But the Nuggets came into it and were like, we don't care. We're going to go out. We're going to do what we need to do. Unfortunately, early on, the Clippers clearly showed that they were the better team at that point. They were dominating a lot of these games. The Nuggets just seemed like they were struggling. It was very similar to what was going on in their first round series against Utah. And then the Nuggets came out and played a really, really good Game 5 to the point where even though they were down by 20 points, they came all the way back and won that game. And then you go to Game 6, you're down by 20 plus again, and I'm thinking, okay, well, that's pretty much the end. And the Nuggets come all the way back and win that game. So you go into Game 7 on Tuesday, and, again, it was just a question of, are the Clippers going to get out to an early start and then the Nuggets are going to come back and win a close one. It sort of happened that way, but not 100%, because about midway through the second quarter, the Nuggets were down by 12. And once again, I kind of felt like, oh, well, they can't come back again, can they? Well, the Nuggets came back, cut the deficit to just 2 at the break, and then dominated the second half. Specifically, when we got to the fourth, where it took nearly the whole first half of that fourth quarter for the Clippers to even make a shot. And the Nuggets, from start to finish, just continued to kick the Clippers' butt. At one point up by 20 plus, and we were thinking, okay, now it's the Clippers, can they respond to being down by 20 like the Nuggets did? And the Nuggets would not allow them to get anywhere near that, and ended up winning, I think, by 18. And you could just see on the faces of the Clippers that they didn't know what hit them. And I think even early on in that game, even though they ended up getting up by double digits at one point, you just kind of saw that the Clippers were not that confident. And then you're starting to hear reports about how, they were tired out, they needed better rotations in the fourth quarter, and it was just like the Nuggets just outwilled them. That's basically what happened here. And there's a lot that is blame that needs to be put on guys like Kawhi, Paul George, and particularly Doc Rivers, who, I think his job might be on the line after blowing a 3-1 lead for the second time in his career coaching the Clippers. And once again, the Clippers struggled to get out of the second round. For 3 straight games, they were 1 win away from going to the Western Conference Finals for the first time in nearly half a century. And they couldn't get it done. And the Nuggets, led by the guys that I mentioned before, Nikola Jokic having 13 or 14 assists last night, just bowling out. He's arguably, by the way, the best big man in the game. He could just dish it off. He can create his own shots. He's just an all-around tremendous player. The Nuggets were able to win this series and come back once again from down 3-1. So if I'm the Lakers, you may not want to take a 3-1 lead. You may want to, go up 3-0 to kind of, prevent the trend from continuing. And look, LeBron has already been in a situation where he came back from down 3-1 a couple of years ago, if you remember, in the NBA Finals against Golden State. And some people were saying that this 3-1, blowing of the lead by the Clippers was worse than what the Warriors did. I disagree, because the Warriors lost the championship series being up 3-1. The Clippers, this was only the second round, but a lot of questions with very few answers right now. And the Clippers don't have their first round pick till 2027. So even though people might say their window isn't closed, I'm sure they're wondering if that was going to be the closest that this group of guys that the Clippers have is going to get to winning a title. But nonetheless, you got to tip your cap to the Denver Nuggets, man. What a tremendous job by them, continuing to fight, never give up. And Jamal Murray, Jokic, and all those guys are continuing to prove why they are one of the most up-and-coming franchises. And I got to tell you, they do have a legitimate shot of pulling off another upset. If they get past the Los Angeles Lakers, it doesn't matter if they're playing the Heat or the Celtics in the finals. I think that they just cannot be beat. Because if you're able to go through 2 of the top teams, basically the 2 top teams in the West, in both LA franchises, and also come back from down 3-1 in 2 of at least the 3 series to get to the finals, there's nothing that the other team could do to rattle the confidence and the belief that the Nuggets have. So the Nuggets are for real. And now it's about how are they going to do in this Western Conference Finals against this LA Lakers team. And speaking of those Los Angeles Lakers, they're obviously, and not surprisingly, in the Western Conference Finals, led by LeBron James, Anthony Davis, all those guys, and Kyle Kuzma, and that team. And look, let's face it, we knew the Lakers were going to be here. We knew that they would face a tiny bit of adversity, but for the most part, they pretty much dominated their first 2 rounds. I mean, they played Portland, they lose the first game, everybody started panicking, and then the Lakers just dominated the next 4 games. Then they go and they play the Rockets, who were lucky to get out of the first round against OKC. And they won the first game, the Rockets did. And once again, people were questioning about the Lakers. Can they respond? Blah, blah, blah. They dominated the next 4 games. So if the Lakers go into this conference finals against Denver and let's say lose the first game, let's not have this same scary thing of, oh my God, what are the Lakers doing? They're going to get swept, or, what can they do to redeem themselves? It's like, okay, look, they've been in that situation before. I will say that because the Lakers have had a good amount of time to rest, it may they may look sluggish early on. And what I mean by early on is that it may take them a game to get going again. So if they do lose the first game, wouldn't be that surprising. But the Lakers have to understand and respect this Nuggets team because they basically have faced every single type of adversity you could think of, especially being down by multiple games in a series and, double digits in a bunch of those games as well. And the Lakers know that they have to dominate from start to finish. They can't get up by 20 points in the third quarter, put in their second string guys and, just try to trade them point for point. You have to be aggressive from start. You have to put it in the Nuggets' mind that they are not going to have the same amount of success. And I'm sure LeBron understands that. He's going to keep this team focused. He's going to say, guys, we got to go out there and do what we're capable of. We're here for a reason. We have high expectations. Let's go do it. And if the Lakers can do that, they shouldn't really have that much trouble against this Nuggets team. But I will say this, when looking at this Lakers squad, they're not necessarily that good at shooting the three or the mid-range. They're really good at playing the old school type of basketball, driving the lane, getting dunks, getting fouled, going to the free throw line. But if Anthony Davis and LeBron James are struggling from the free throw line, and they've had several times in these playoffs, they may lose some of these games, these close games, because they're not making those. Free throw shooting is the most important part of any basketball game ever. And if the Lakers are not making their free throws, they're going to have a very tough time because they know that they're probably going to be going to the line a lot. They got to finish. They certainly do. The Nuggets also have to as well when they get fouled. But I'm telling you, they have to make their free throws when they matter. And they all matter, regardless of what point in the game you're at. They all matter. They're called free throws for a reason. There's nobody guarding you, nothing. You just make the shot. It's not that hard. You got to do it. You get paid millions of dollars to miss free throws. Come on, man. Like, you got to be better than that. So I think that's something that I want to keep my eye on because I know the Lakers like to be aggressive down low and want to try to get as many chances to go to the line as possible. And if they do that, and that's what they get, they got to make them count. They have to. Because even if they miss 2 or 3, it's going to give the Nuggets a huge amount of confidence. But nonetheless, this is a very, very dominant Lakers team led by arguably the best player in the NBA right now, LeBron James. And he's got Anthony Davis. And look, at this point, you really have to say it's the Lakers championship to lose because the Clippers team that everybody expected to meet the Lakers aren't there. So now the Lakers are saying, all we got to do is beat Denver, and then we got to play either Boston or Miami, and we're winning a championship. And they know that in some aspects, they're better than all 3 of these teams. They just got to go out there and prove it. So with that being said, Neil, who do you have in this series? Well, here's the thing. As much as my brain would tell me, pick the Lakers, you know that they're a better team, it's a logical choice, yada, yada, yada. But honestly, I got to go with the Denver Nuggets in this one. I'm sorry. I have to because, look, first of all, they were my pick to go to the finals when this whole thing started, so I'm not going to change now. Secondly, the Nuggets, as I've mentioned twice already, have faced every single form of adversity you could think of when it comes to being down in series, down in critical games, everything. And the Lakers are going to be off for a while, and I think they're going to underestimate, like the other 2 teams that they faced have underestimated this Nuggets team. I think they will. And I think that Mike Malone and that stingy defense are going to make it very difficult for LeBron. And I think if the Lakers aren't moving and grooving the way that they're capable of, it's a Nuggets game. If you keep it relatively low scoring, like you saw in Game 7, the Nuggets have the advantage. They've proven that time and time again. So I'm going to take the Nuggets, and I'm going to take them to 7. So I think both series will go to 7, and I think it's going to be Miami versus the Denver Nuggets in the NBA Finals this year. With that being said, that'll wrap it up for this edition of Mofobo Network Presents. Please give it a like. Do you agree? Do you disagree? And whether you agree or disagree, let me know. I would love to hear from you guys. It would truly mean a lot to me. We post new videos talking about the different big topics in the world of sports every single Wednesday. So make sure you subscribe and also hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of the new videos that we post. If you want to stay up to date also with the videos, you could also subscribe and like the Mofobo Network Facebook page. There, you can also see when I post the new videos and also the new podcast episodes. And speaking of the podcast, make sure you also like and subscribe to the Mofobo Network podcast, which is available on Anchor and Spotify. It's completely free. Please go check it out. Just like here on the YouTube channel, I talk about things that are going on in the world of sports. Yesterday, we talked about Steve Cohen having an official agreement to become the new owner of the Mets. And we'll have another episode of the podcast coming out tomorrow. We post new episodes of the podcast every single Tuesday and Thursday. So you can like and subscribe to the Mofobo Network Facebook page, and you can stay up to date with the new podcast and YouTube episodes that we post between Tuesdays and Thursdays. You can follow me on my personal Twitter at THENVPSHOW and my personal Instagram at NVPQB11. If you want to just listen to more of my voice, you can check me out as the host of the Devils State of Mind podcast, which is the New Jersey Devils-based podcast on the Hockey Podcast Network. There you can listen to me talk about, things that are going on in the New Jersey Devils world, all things hockey, and so much more. We've had some great guests. We have several of the other hosts from the team-based podcast on the HPN. There's just been some great content so far. Please go check it out. You can see that on Spotify, on Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, iTunes, wherever you listen to podcasts. Just go search Hockey Podcast Network or Devil's State of Mind and you'll find it. We have a Twitter account for the podcast at Devil's State and a Instagram at Devil's State of Mind, as well as, just like Mofobo, a Facebook page where you can stay up to date with the new episodes posted every single Monday on all places you listen to podcasts. So again, Devil's State of Mind or Hockey Podcast Network. And there is a link on all the social medias to the main website for the Devil's State of Mind podcast, where also there you can bookmark and just keep up to date with the new episodes there as well. So please go check that out and support me on there as well. I would greatly appreciate it. Last but certainly not least, go check out my book right now on Amazon and also Barnes & Noble, JETS, Pain, Pain, Pain. It's about all the pain and suffering of being a New York Jets fan. And the Jets really are continuing to give their fans pain, especially after their week 1 drubbing at the hands of the Buffalo Bills. But please go check it out. It's about all the painful memories, painful games, painful player decisions, and so much more ever since they won Super Bowl III back in 1969. It's available for hardcover and ebook for the price of $19.69. You see what I did there? So if you're a Jets fan, a football fan, if you know someone who's one of those, or if you just want to support me, please go check it out. Again, available for hardcover and ebook. Again, JETS, Pain, Pain, Pain. So thank you guys very much for checking out this edition of the Mofobo Network Presents YouTube channel, and we will see you in the next episode. As always, continue to stay safe out there during this difficult time with the COVID-19 pandemic. Continue to wear a mask, wear gloves if you have to, practice social distancing, and if you're not feeling well, please stay home because we're trying to continue to stay as healthy as possible, flatten the curve so that we can eventually find a vaccine and be able to go out freely once more. Shout out to all of the essential workers out there right now, the people working day in and day out to keeping us safe and keeping us with a little bit of form of normalcy as we're going through this very difficult time right now. We really appreciate all of your hard work and determination because without it, we would not be in a good position right now. So thank you guys very much. And also, as I always say at the end of every single episode, no matter what's going on in the world, no matter what hardships you might be dealing with, especially right now with so many crazy things going on in the world outside, just remember when you wake up in the morning to have a smile on your face, think positively, and kick some Mofobo. So thank you guys very much again. My name is Neil Piano. We'll check you guys out in the next episode, and God bless.